Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm Greg Flamong, and that is Tyler Wojciak of the Locked On Irish podcast. Joining me today, I didn't call it a Friday happy hour because I don't know, I just didn't. But it is Friday, and it is kind of that hour. So, but we've got some breaking news. We were set to talk about the playoffs a little bit more. We're talking about the playoff run. We're talking about you being unable to get out of Atlanta after the national title game. About 30 minutes ago, news broke that Chad Bowden, the GM of Notre Dame Football, is leaving to take the same position at USC. Obviously, Notre Dame's rival. Reportedly from John Bryce on Football Scoop, he's making upwards of 7 figures. So that's a nice raise. Matt Freeman said it's 3x what he was making at Notre Dame. So, that's, to me, like I see some comments in here about loyalty and all those other things. Let me tell you, if someone pays you 7 figures to live in LA, you do that. That is a thing that you do. I don't care. Like, if it was me, I would do the same thing. And no one loves Notre Dame more than I do. So that's what he's got going on. So we're going to talk about what this means for Notre Dame, what this means for USC, what this means for, potentially some players, if that is a thing that comes up. And so we'll talk about all those things. And then maybe if there's time, we can get into the playoff stuff, or we'll just have to have Tyler on again and we can talk about it then. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you hear, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And Tyler, how are you feeling? How are you feeling?
I feel pretty good. So I made a New Year's resolution on January 21st. I was a little late, but I had just dealt with a pretty nightmarish situation at the Atlanta airport, which we can get to eventually. But I'm sitting on the plane. We're delayed, haven't taken off yet. And I was just getting some texts from my friends, and everyone's obviously upset. They're bummed out because Notre Dame lost the national championship the night before, and the transfer portal window was opening up. We knew that Notre Dame was going to lose some guys that they didn't want to lose, and Al Golden was going to be on his way out. So I remember sitting there thinking to myself, okay, new resolution. I am not going to get worked up over offseason stuff unless it's like Marcus Freeman leaving. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. So today, that's being put to the test. And you know what? I'm doing pretty good with my resolution so far because I saw it. It's disappointing. But what I'm not going to do is panic, because I remember last year, especially at the early portion of the offseason, there were so many things happening and everyone was freaking out. People were calling the roster in a catastrophic state. And guess what? They went to the national championship. They were able to reload. So as long as Marcus Freeman is in charge, as long as the basic structure of the football program is in place, then I am not going to get too worked up about it.
I agree. I agree with that. And we'll talk about it in a second. Tyler, I have to say, every time I see you, you look terrific. You look fantastic. You're looking dapper. I'm very happy to say that. That's just a true fact. And if you want to look good, then you need to go to ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ and all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2025. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. All right. I'm reading the chat.
Chat's blowing up right now.
Chat's blowing up. And that's
not totally a lot of good vibes, too.
Not a lot of good vibes in the chat. This is what I'll say. And look, everyone is entitled to their own opinion on this, right? And that is what it is. And people are questioning, why wouldn't Notre Dame match? Are they not serious? Okay. It is my belief that Notre Dame could have matched this if they wanted to. And they have decided not to. And I would like people to consider why you think that is. Why do you think that they decided not to do this? You know, people are calling it the biggest loss that could have happened, the biggest thing that could have happened. And if that's true in reality, then why didn't Notre Dame match this? And I'll tell you right now, it's not because they didn't. It's not because they're not committed to Notre Dame. It's not because they're not committed to winning. It's not because of any of that. So just consider, why wouldn't they match this? Why did they allow this to happen? Chad Bowden almost went to Michigan last year, as Michael Hahn pointed out. He almost went to Michigan last year, and he didn't, right? Notre Dame gave him a raise, but like now USC's giving him 3x what it is. And look, another thing is, like, Notre Dame doesn't really have to match. Like you Tyler, you live in Southern California. I live in Southern California. The Notre Dame doesn't have to match, right? Let's just say $1 million does not go as far as like $700K in South Bend or Granger or wherever everyone is, right? Like, it does not go as far. So Notre Dame doesn't have to match, okay? But they chose not to. And I think people need to consider why that is. Now, and I think you need to just take a step back and think about, if it's true that Notre Dame is in fact a serious program, if it's true that Notre Dame is in fact committed to winning, why didn't they match this? And I think that you can come to a conclusion where, while this is a loss for the program, there are aspects of this that will be felt within the program. Matt Freeman, ISD's Matt Freeman, said that Notre Dame is probably going to lose some recruiting staff because of this, because Chad Bowden will take them to LA. That is a thing that's probably going to happen, so be ready for that. But I think that people need to consider that Notre Dame is ready for this move, and they have moves that they want to make after that. So I would just say, be patient, wait for things to turn out, and then we'll go from there. Tyler, where are you at with this? Just give me all your kind of thoughts, big picture thoughts on this.
So this is that time of year when I'm spending a lot of time on Football Scoops. So shout out to John Bryce and all the fellows over there. They do a great job. And I don't think, it's just an accident that last night, when a report came out that Jim Knowles is entertaining job offers from other big time programs, Notre Dame was included in that list. And guess what Jim Knowles is demanding in the market right now? $3 million. And Notre Dame is apparently at least willing to spend somewhere close to that to replace Al Golden. So if it's a money thing and Notre Dame is afraid to spend, then they would not even be in the conversation for Jim Knowles. So the fact that that's happening last night, and then we get this news today about Chad Bowden getting triple his salary. It's like, okay, Notre Dame at some point has to make decisions about who is worth it and how much do they need to pay. And I would say any day of the week that a defensive coordinator at Notre Dame coming off a national championship berth is much more important than general manager, even though I fully understand that the general manager position in college football is more important now than it's ever been. It's going to continue to be important. And I think Chad Bowden did a terrific job at Notre Dame for most of the time that he was there. I think any person who's in that position, I mean, you could always do like revisionist history and say like, well, what happened here? Why didn't this recruit sign with Notre Dame? You could do that, but you could do that with literally anyone ever. Nobody is perfect. But Notre Dame is in a position now where they're looking for a defensive coordinator, which we all knew was coming as soon as the Bengals fired their DC. And at some point, they got to look around and be like, all right, we have money. We're willing to spend it. Who are we spending it on and how much? And I think that Notre Dame is just in a situation where the Chad Bowden thing happened. It's very different than last year, where it's like, oh, Michigan is targeting him, and then Notre Dame fought really hard to get him back. This year, it's like USC is targeting him. 30 minutes later, he's gone. So I think that kind of tells you Notre Dame's approach to this whole situation.
Yeah. And again, you just kind of look at, like, especially the way that the 2025 class ended, right? Like, it wasn't a great ending. I mean, Madden Faremo made it so, like, he made a last minute decision, and that's a big deal, right? And obviously,
how funny is that in retrospect? Now
it is funny in retrospect, given that then it was USC was a finalist there. And by the way, I don't think there's no reason to believe at this point that this move will have any effect on Madden Faremo. And I think he's happy with his choice, and I think that Kingston Viliamu-Asa is happy with his choice. I don't know that there's any reason to believe this will affect a player. It was pointed out in the chat. I didn't start, and I apologize for that. Here it goes. JSMIT. Why do this before a huge recruiting day tomorrow, junior day? That is a real thing that there might be repercussions for the junior day, right? Like,
No doubt about that.
I think it was supposed to be a big junior day. There were a lot of big time commits, or not commits, but a lot of big time players committed to attending the junior day. And so, will that have any effect on things? I think from the overall operation, right? Like, the players are coming around to come to visit Notre Dame, to be a part of Notre Dame, to meet the staff, to be around the coaches. They're not necessarily coming to be around Chad Bowden, although he is going to be the one in charge of that whole thing. So someone's going to have to take over that. So that, look, this part of it is going to be awkward, right? But for the greater sense of it, like, this affects how the recruiting class goes forward. But I do think we need to look at who Notre Dame brings in here and how they adjust to this. I personally believe that Notre Dame will have a plan. I think that the next person that comes in, it will happen fairly quickly, as far as these things go. And then we'll start to have some answers to that. Obviously, it looks bad, right? And I think for fans, anytime you lose someone like this, and especially when, people are putting on Twitter, like, this is the number one person that Notre Dame couldn't afford to lose. Like, I definitely don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, where do you come out on that kind of statement?
It's so hard to say for me because we all understand that Chad Bowden has been instrumental to the program ever since Marcus Freeman took over. Like, there is a reason why Freeman trusted him so much. We see some of the videos and stuff that he does on big recruiting weekends and all that, but most of the work that he does is behind the scenes. So, like, I don't feel like I'm in a great position to say, oh, we could easily, replace him with someone else, because I just don't know. None of us do, right? We're all looking at it from the outside. We just kind of see the final results. We see this recruit committed to Notre Dame or they didn't. This guy transferred to Notre Dame or they didn't. So that part is hard for me to say definitively, like, how big of a loss is this? But I think it goes back to the point we made earlier. Last year, Notre Dame fought like hell to keep him away from Michigan. This year, it didn't seem like there was much effort involved. And we don't know the reasons why. We just can look at, this is what we do know. And I think that, those course of actions kind of is telling to some degree. But to say that, like, Chad Bowden is the biggest loss to this program, like, it is a loss. It's disappointing. The fact that he's going to USC is obviously going to hurt a little bit more because it's a rival. But, like, again, if Notre Dame really wanted him, if they really wanted to keep him around and he was worth that much money in their eyes, I absolutely think that they would have tried to match it. Maybe I'm wrong. I would say that's unlikely, though.
I just think they would have. I think they could have kept him around.
Yeah, we know Freeman loves him. So,
right.
Again, like, if Freeman, let me put it this way. If Freeman thought he was worth 3 times his salary, I think he stays at Notre Dame because they are obviously very close. And I think Freeman and Chad probably had a moment where, like, hey, man, that's an incredible offer. Even though it's to a rival, 3 times your salary, take advantage of it and go. And also, something we have not mentioned here, Chad lived in LA. Like, he's familiar with the area.
He was that was a big part of his story, that he and Jack Collinsworth were out here in LA, and they were both like roommates, right?
Right.
And they had both kind of talked about, ending up where they ended up, with Jack Collinsworth at NBC doing his thing and Chad ending up at Notre Dame doing that, or like getting to like the top. Like, Chad Bowden is very upward looking in terms of like what he wants to be, an NFL GM one day, right? Rightly so. I mean, you're a GM in college, you want to ascend to those ranks. And by the way, like, why not do that in LA? Like, moving to LA on that kind of front, to me, makes a ton of sense. Like, it makes a ton of sense for Chad Bowden. And I think the biggest kind of like negative impact to Notre Dame would be that I do think that Chad Bowden is vastly going to improve USC's situation,
No
right?
doubt.
Like, I had some people, my friends, texting me like, "What do you make of this?" And I was like, I think it's a bigger gain for USC than it is a loss for Notre Dame, because like, he is going to hope, like, LA now, like the LA area, like, that is going to be hit hard by USC now. Like, that is going to be it is going to be much harder to get a KVA and a Madden Faremo out of Southern California now, because there is no Chad Bowden is going to be all over this city, this county, into Orange County. Like Southern California is now going to be like hit hard by USC. That is going to be much more difficult for Notre Dame to land those types of players. Like Notre Dame did have a pipeline to like St. John Bosco. That will have an effect on Notre Dame and the types of guys that they can bring in. I think this is a bigger deal for USC than it is like a negative for Notre Dame. And so that is kind of where it's and to be honest with you, like, and we can kind of transition into talking about like some of the transfers as well. Like, you know, Sam Pendleton goes to Tennessee, right? He's not on Tennessee's not on Notre Dame's schedule. Not that big of a deal. We need to see where like Rocco ends up. We need to see where Pat Coogan ends up. Like, these are good football players, and they could end up on Notre Dame's schedule at some point. Like, to me, it's not so much that Notre Dame lost them and they can't replace them. It's that you might have to play them.
Yeah.
And that could be kind of a negative thing. Kind of any thoughts on that kind of aspect of things?
I think it just goes back to the point that we continue to make here. It's like everyone knows that USC is going to be on the schedule. So it's not only are you losing Chad, he becomes competition immediately from day one. And that's going to be fun, right? Like the next big time prospect out of Southern California that Notre Dame is really going after. It's going to be Marcus Freeman competing against one of his closest friends. I mean, Marcus was in Chad's wedding. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but now they're competitors. And again, if Freeman looked at the situation, knowing that not only is he leaving the program, so they have to deal with replacing him, but he's also going to a direct competitor, and they were still like okay with it. And that was another big piece when Marcus Freeman signed his extension. It wasn't just that Marcus was getting paid a lot more money. There was going to be a raise for his entire assistant pool. So again, I think they all looked at this. It was like, look, you know, best of luck to you, Chad. I don't think that there, you know, is a ton of animosity between the two. I would be pretty surprised by that. Like, I don't know if Marcus is going to take this personally. I think that Marcus gets it, that sometimes, you know, you got to take steps in your career, and it might not be great for the place you're at the time, but this is what happens. I think the fact that Chad lived in LA at one point in his, I think it was like his early 20s too. So a good time to do it, but I don't think he had a lot of money back then. He has a lot more money now. And I understand a lot of people in the comments are like, LA is going to take half of it. That's a little bit of a reach as someone who lived in Indiana and now currently lives in LA. I think
they don't take half. They don't take half.
And admittedly, it's been, you know, a tough couple weeks for LA in the news, but it's still pretty nice to live here. So I understand why he would want to do that. He's recently married. The wife is probably thrilled. And I just look at it as this is a tough loss for Notre Dame. They're going to have to find a replacement. There will be some lingering effects. It's not great that this is happening as the transfer portal window is still open for Notre Dame because they got to negotiate contracts and things like that. But overall, I just think that when you look at the whole situation, if Marcus Freeman, if Notre Dame were like, we absolutely cannot afford to let him go, they would have matched, and I think he would have stayed.
Michael Hahn, let's give some props to my guests here. I meant to say this before the Bowden stuff, but Tyler, your content is much appreciated. Tyler does a great job on the Locked On Irish podcast.
Appreciate it.
He has great guests all the time, myself being one of them. He only gets the best, right, Tyler?
You're definitely one of the most frequent. I'm coming up. So my next episode, this is crazy. It'll be the 400th episode I do of Locked On.
Oh, because
it's daily and it's also only like 30 minutes. So I was just, and I keep track of like, I'm pretty organized. So I go back and look, and you've been on quite a lot. So you've definitely helped me get to 400. That's for sure.
No one pushed Christian Gray harder than us. That's
true.
That's true. Hey, listen, look, not wrong. We're not wrong about that.
I know.
Tough. Listen, if you're gonna have a tough time, have a tough time in the national championship game is what we say. I want to get your opinion on what if you think this says anything, because our guy Abel Gaming is losing his mind right now. Do you think this says anything about Notre Dame's commitment in a negative way? Says anything about Notre Dame's commitment to the football program or winning or anything of that nature?
Not really. No. I don't think it's not like the Elko departure when he left for the DC job. I feel like I trust Pete Bavacqua. I trust Marcus Freeman. I do believe that they're obsessed. And I think that, the Mike Mickens situation, the way that this is being handled, the fact that Notre Dame was, not willing to just promote Mickens immediately, because I think that they're like, hey, we got to look around. We got to make sure we get the best in class replacement. Maybe that ends up being Mike Mickens, but I actually think that the fact that they're even in this Jim Knowles conversation, it's like, hey, man, they're taking big swings. They're trying to fill Marcus Freeman's staff with the best possible candidates possible. And again, it'd be so much different if it weren't USC. I think, like, if it were, I don't know, like Ole Miss,
Well, Tennessee or something.
Yeah, it would just be different. But no, I think Notre Dame is still very committed to winning it all. There was an interesting note, though, in that article, that Notre Dame only apparently had like $7 to $8 million in their NIL budget this year compared to like Ohio State. I think, we know that Notre Dame is in a better position with NIL. They obviously need to improve in that respect. And I think a national championship berth is going to help do that. I do think there's a lot of momentum. A lot of people who maybe they weren't as eager to donate before are more than willing to do it now because of what this team did this past season. And it's something that I think about all the time, especially in the off season. There's good days and bad days. I say it all the time. But when I was having that moment to myself earlier this week, when I was thinking like, okay, I'm not going to get bothered, I knew it was because there's only going to be bad news. The door is only open one way right now because Notre Dame's season just ended. It's not like they can add players in the portal right now. It's only one way. So you're going to see players leave. You're going to see coaches leave. Eventually, they're going to hire coaches. So there will be some good news on that front. But it's just a bad time right now. And it's partially because Notre Dame just went to the national championship. It's just going to be bad news for a little bit, but that doesn't mean it's going to be like that for the entire offseason. This will come to an end eventually.
I think it's hard to, like, for fans, because it's like you said, it is all bad news. And I think that the kind of rumor machine that takes place around this time every year took place last year as well. Like Jeremiah Love was leaving for a spell last year around this time. Like, people were afraid of that, and so there's always kind of like those rumors that are out there. And so then when the losses do come, people, I think, mentally kind of put them all in the same, like, that it all happened, right? And then, eventually some of it happens and some of it doesn't. And I think then people kind of step back. Notre Dame will hire a GM to replace him, right? They will, they will have a recruiting staff. Like, they will do those things. And like, I can't speak to the exact number of Notre Dame's NIL budget. I don't think that this really factors into Chad, though. Like, the money they have for, someone of his position is separate from NIL, I believe. So look, I think that it's difficult for people to process. I think I would wait for some more reporting from guys like Matt Freeman on this. He's going to have some stuff on Notre Dame, look for who they're coming with. I think of all of it's a surprise, like, it's very surprising. This is not something that was on like anyone's radar before this, right? Like, for example, like Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan go in the portal, right? Not surprising at all. Like, we knew, we had heard their names before. We weren't sure totally just because of the long run they went in, and the long run they went on. We weren't sure what they were going to do, but they ended up going in the portal. Not surprising at all. Didn't hear anything about Chad Bowden. And like you said, I think you hit on the key point. Like, the fact that it's USC makes it so much worse. And last offseason it was Michigan, and that obviously no one wants to have that. It's interesting. Like, 3x for your GM. It's a pretty big raise. That's like a really big raise. Like, that is way beyond, like, that is beyond what like the going rate is for a lot of GMs that I've seen kind of out there. So it is USC made sure they were going to get their guy.
Yeah, and you can't fake desperation, and I think you can call USC a desperate program right now because they've had two really bad seasons back to back. They have a ton of money invested in the head coach. So it's not like they want to fire him because that buyout would be insane. So on one hand, this is a bit of a risk for Chad. Like, obviously, he gets triple his
Yeah.
salary, gets to move. That's all great. But like, if things don't get better at USC in a hurry, like there could be some changes, or maybe Lincoln Riley leaves. We are just a couple months removed from this insane report from Bruce Feldman on The Athletic. So I don't believe it was just made up that Lincoln Riley was entertaining UCF. So it's like, I have no idea what is going on at USC. And clearly they're tasking Chad with turning things around quickly. And if they aren't able to do it, I mean, that whole staff could be on the move, and USC could be in another rebuild here in like 1 or 2 years. So I get why Chad made that decision, but that doesn't mean it didn't come without its risk. And I think that the reason that they were willing to pay him so much money is because they are desperate.
This is the last one, or the last comment about this from Able Gaming. Anyways, cope away. Just another example of why they are not serious. We are so back. We are so back. Notre Dame, 4 days post national title appearance. Not a serious program. Listen, the fans are the fans for a reason. God bless all of you. Thank you for your attendance. Hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. We're trying. You know what we're trying to do, Tyler? We're trying to get to 600. We need 600, about 600 more people to get to 10K subscribers. You know what?
You get a plaque.
Subscribe to this show. Do you get a plaque for 10K, Tyler?
You get something.
Well, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna get us to 10K. We're gonna get you to 10K, Tyler. Let's spread it all around. After this show, if you haven't done so already, go to Locked On Irish, subscribe to his podcast as well. We got a question in here about the DC search. The DC search. We talked about Jim Knowles, Notre Dame being linked with him. I think a lot of people talked about Mike Mickens. I believe you were on that train as like someone who thought Mike Mickens made a lot of sense. I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you want Notre Dame to go in that direction with Mike Mickens?
I want them to, so long as Jim Knowles says no. I think Jim Knowles is the only person who would be worth it to take, because I think, if you take Knowles, then Mickens will probably leave because he wants that job. I think he certainly has a case that he's qualified. He deserves it, all that. And I just think about how I would approach that situation. Like if there was a big job opening at where I work, I applied, I thought I was going to get it. Everyone kind of agreed that I was ready to take that next step. And then they hired someone over me. Like I wouldn't want to work for that person. But what Jim Knowles has done, not just at Ohio State, at Oklahoma State, like he has been the architect of some elite defenses in his career. So if Notre Dame goes out and they're able to get Jim Knowles, I think that is the only guy I would rather take. Otherwise, I think Mike Mickens is the clear choice here for a bunch of different reasons. I think he's ready. His familiarity with the program, keeping him on as the cornerbacks coach. There's like a bunch of different reasons why I think Mickens should and ultimately will be the DC. But I also don't fault Notre Dame for at least kicking the tires on a guy like Jim Knowles, because there's not a ton of risk involved in that, because he has proven it every single place that he's been at.
What would you say, or how would you feel, I guess, if it was not Mickens and it was not Knowles? It was like, I'll just say Jim Leonard because he's top of mind. Jamie talked about him.
I know. Jim Leonard has been on every defensive coordinator search
well,
list.
Since he's on everyone's list, let's just what would you say? Like, what would you think if, because to be honest with you, I think if it was Leonard, that would probably cost them Mickens.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion.
Anyone other than Mickens,
this isn't that's not sourced or anything. It's just my opinion. I think if it's not Knowles and they go with Leonard, I don't know that Mickens wants to be co-DC, and frankly, I don't know that Leonard would come to be co-DC in that kind of situation. What would that? How would you feel about that? What would that say to you? Like, you get Leonard, you lose Mickens. Where would you land on that?
It would be a good hire in the short term. I mean, he's so well respected. He's on staff with the Denver Broncos. They had one of the best defenses in the NFL. But I think the problem with hiring a guy like Leonard is every offseason I would assume that he's going to leave and that he's going to go back to the NFL. Whereas, like, at least with Al Golden, you got 3 years out of him. Every year was sort of a question, like maybe he'll leave, maybe he'll go back to the NFL. But I felt pretty good the first offseason, the stock on Al Golden is not nearly as high as it is now. But after the second year where he was with the program, I felt pretty comfortable that he was going to stay, and it seemed like he was really happy there. And there was always a possibility that he would leave, but it was a short list. And then, the Bengals ended up being one of those teams. If Leonard is the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, I would expect them to have to hire another defensive coordinator next year, because I just assume he wants a DC job in the NFL. Right now, he's like a defensive backs coach and the pass game coordinator for the Broncos. Yeah. He's not a full-time DC. So he comes to Notre Dame. They have another really good year. Defense is really good. I would fully expect him to bolt to the NFL after that, because he seems like an NFL guy, doesn't want to deal with recruiting and all that. So I think, there'd be some benefits. I'd be excited, but I just wouldn't enjoy that. Whereas like if Mike Mickens is the DC, I don't expect him to be at Notre Dame forever, but I think you'd be at Notre Dame for several years, and you could kind of build that continuity, which we've seen has been so important with 3 years under Al Golden.
Yeah. It like Leonard, and by the way, I threw him out as an example, and now we're like digging into his Wikipedia and looking where he's been. But like post Wisconsin, where he was the DC, and I think he could have been hired by anyone at that point, like post that run, because obviously he had very good defenses there. He goes to Illinois as a senior football analyst. Then he goes to Denver, and he's a defensive backs coach and pass game coordinator. And like Denver's defense this year has been really good, really, really good. I mean, like the Notre Dame of the NFL, basically. And so, like, obviously they've done really good work. Jamie was talking about, like, Illinois started doing some really fun stuff in 2023, so he was kind of a help there as well. Like, it's interesting. Why didn't he go take a DC job somewhere, right? And maybe he was looking for the right situation, maybe a lot of things. But, like, that's kind of interesting. I mean, he was as hot a name as, like, Marcus Freeman was when he – in 2021, when he ended up going to Notre Dame, like post 2020. So that's interesting. I just, to me, if they don't go with Mike Mickens, to me, it's just a sign, like, despite what Marcus Freeman said at that press conference, he must not think he's ready. Yeah. To me, it's just such a no-brainer if he is, like if you truly believe that he's ready to be a defensive coordinator, and that you've been grooming him and all these other things. And like people say, like, oh, you need to bring in a veteran to be with him. Marcus Freeman was a defensive coordinator. Like the head coach is a defensive guy. And, what we kind of chatted before, like this is what Luke Fickell did with Marcus when he brought him in and he kind of groomed him and then he let him go. But Marcus was the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati. So it would be surprising to me that they wouldn't go that route, but wouldn't that tell you, like, he just doesn't think he's ready?
I would be shocked if Mike Mickens is not the DC because of exactly what you said, unless they hire Knowles. Like we're probably putting too much stock in one report. That's not to say that it's inaccurate. It's just that like Penn State is also after him. They're willing to spend like $3+ million because, they got all their guys coming back. They're also kind of in a desperate situation as well, where they're so sick of coming up short and seeing like Ohio State and Michigan beat them, or Notre Dame this year, but like they keep coming up short. They have Drew Aller, Singleton, Allen. Like they have a really good team coming back next year. So they're willing to pay an arm and a leg to try to get Jim Knowles away from Ohio State. I don't know if Notre Dame is in that sort of boat, right? Because they just made the national championship. But I'm with you. If Marcus Freeman does not go with Mickens and he goes to someone other than Knowles and just maybe takes like, I don't think it'd be Leonard. Also, Leonard is a DB's coach too. So if they hired Leonard, then Mickens would almost certainly be out the door unless they wanted to split it up like cornerback safeties. But again, I don't think that's going to happen with Leonard. I think he's perfectly content in the NFL. But it's interesting because we're seeing Marcus Freeman really come into his own as a head coach. I think he's hired a terrific staff, and he did all that with very minimal head coaching experience. Like going into year 4, he's not like a seasoned veteran who's been around for decades, but like we could see it this year, just his demeanor on the sidelines. This guy is way more comfortable in his own skin. He knows what he wants. And I think that kind of goes back to the Chad Bowden thing where it's like, maybe before he would have felt like, man, we need to keep everyone where now he's like, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to figure it out. I can find someone else. But I still ultimately think that for all the reasons we mentioned earlier, Mike Mickens is going to be the guy, but they just conducted a legitimate search, which I think was the right thing to do.
Yeah. JJ's Gene says John Bryce said Knowles just trying to bid up his price, presumably to stay at Ohio State. I haven't heard that, or I didn't hear or see if John put that in an article or whatever it might be. And just as a FYI, I'm going to have John Bryce on this program next Wednesday. Or scheduled to, right? Like his world is very crazy right now. So if that has to get moved, it'll get moved. But as of right now, he'll be on the show next Wednesday. So I'll talk to him about some of these things and how he feels about the Chad Bowden situation and all that. It's a very interesting time. Rajon said Bryce did say that. So we'll have to see. Obviously that would make a ton of sense, right? Like, he wants to get if people are offering X, it's kind of like players.
Yeah.
To that effect, right? Like, let's put out there what I'm being offered. And so then there you go. Like that's what you need to get to, right? Like there's a report out there, Carnell Tate, $1 million and Jeremiah Smith, $4.5 million. It's like you put it out there because it's like this is what the number is. So this is what's going to cost. And that's just the nature of the business at this point,
It is. And it's something that I would encourage everyone to think about as we get more news like this. Like, I'm sure we're probably going to find out about more guys leaving Notre Dame. Maybe it's not this offseason, maybe it's the next. I'm not trying to like speculate as if I'm in the know of that someone is going to leave, but it's very important to remember that we are so focused on Notre Dame that every departure feels like the end of the world. Like I'm looking at the comments, I see some people freaking out. I just took a peek at the message boards and I saw one titled "Sinking Ship." We were in the national championship 5 days ago, folks. Everyone just needs to take a deep breath here for a second, because what you are witnessing, coaches leaving for higher paid jobs, players leaving for more money to start somewhere else when they weren't guaranteed a job at that school the next year, that is happening to literally every single major program around the country. Ohio State is a perfect example. All those reports about Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate getting these crazy offers to leave. Now, they might stay, but those whispers, those rumors are happening every single school around the country. But we are just in such a Notre Dame bubble that we think it's all happening to Notre Dame when that's just not the reality. And that's why all these coaches always talk about we need rules, we need regulations, because this stuff is happening everywhere. So just because Notre Dame is dealing with it doesn't mean that everyone else isn't dealing with something similar.
Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Told it to your face. So what? I like that. I like that name there, big guy or big lady. You say Notre Dame is willing to spend money because they're competing for the DC at OSU, but the same Football Scoop article pointed out that Notre Dame NIL is $7 to $8 million, while OSU's is $20 million. Maybe Notre Dame couldn't afford Bowden. 100% Notre Dame could afford Bowden if they want. To me, I know that isn't the issue. It's a question of, do they need to spend that? Can they get someone who they feel like can do as good a job for them? Again, what USC wants Chad to do for them may not be what Notre Dame needs Chad to do for them. Like the two programs need different things. And so he may be worth more to you than Notre Dame right now. And that's just the nature of the business. And I mean, we see that all over the world. And essentially what you're asking is for Notre Dame to hang on to him just so he doesn't go to USC. Is that the right use of your resources? Maybe it isn't, right? Like that's the thing that I keep coming back to is, I think Notre Dame, if they wanted to, they can absolutely pay this money. They chose not to. And I think that we need to look at why that might be it. So anyway, the money issue. Well, in the article, are they talking about Notre Dame's current NIL budget or their NIL budget last year?
To me, it felt like that's what last year's roster cost to them. And also, it's important to remember that not only did Ohio State bring in Jeremiah Smith, who I'm sure cost at least a couple $1 million
for
because
sure.
He was that big of a recruit. They got the number one running back in the portal. They got a quarterback in the portal. And then on their defense alone, they probably had like Caleb Downs, obviously, I'm sure warranted a ton of money. Plus, like Tumalau, Jack Sawyer. These are NFL first and second round draft picks that they convinced to stay. It's not going to be $20 million every single year. Eventually, we're probably going to get to a point where that's just the cost of doing business. But I think it was a little bit of an outlier because they had so many guys that they had to pay, mostly to retain. And then they added, the quarterback, the running back, top wide receiver, and a safety that they didn't even anticipate would enter the portal if not for Nick Saban's decision to retire. So I look at Ohio State as a bit of an outlier. But honestly, Ross Bjork, the AD at Ohio State, probably just shouldn't have said that number because it's the only thing that gets talked about whenever you talk about Ohio State, $20 million, $20 million. Like, that's not the norm. And they were just very desperate. To my point earlier, you can't fake desperation. They just watched Michigan beat them for the third straight year in a row, win a Big Ten championship, and win the national title. And all of a sudden, everyone was willing to pony up some money. And I think like that it was just a unique situation that, Notre Dame's probably not spending $20 million on the roster, but like, who would you even spend that money on? Because they weren't retaining players of that caliber like Ohio State was.
Here's the other part. And I made this point on the show I think it was last week or the week before, and I'll make it here again. Like, Notre Dame, their NIL, what it costs, it doesn't cost as much because Judkins and Downs don't want to come to Notre Dame. That is the problem. That's the problem. Like, why? And this is to me, this is a perfect example. Why are the Dodgers spending the most money in free agency? Because the high cost players are choosing to go to the Dodgers and they are taking their money. Caleb Downs did not want to go to Notre Dame. Quinshon Judkins did not want to go to Notre Dame. Now, obviously, Notre Dame didn't need Quinshon Judkins, right? And they didn't technically need Caleb Downs, although they would have taken him. Yeah. It's just like those high-priced, like those high-priced players, they are going to other places because they want to play at other places. And that is my whole thing with Notre Dame and where they need to go with, their program is they are getting like good players in the portal, right? Like Jared Clark is a good player. Ryan Leonard's a good player. Bo Collins, good player. You can go down the line. I'm missing like a Mitch Jeter's a good player. Jaden Harrison's a good player. Chris Mitchell's a good player. Like, these are good players, but it's not like Ryan Williams from Alabama has an All-American season, and he says, "I want to go to Notre Dame and win a national title." I guarantee you, he cost a ton of money. But if he wanted to come, if he called Notre Dame and was like, if you pay me X, I will come. I want to come." They will pay him X. That money will get found. And that's the problem. They need the high-priced players to want to take their money. Yeah. And that's true for the high school recruiting as well.
Yeah, I think the NIL stuff, like everything, it always comes back to that now. And people just kind of forget that Notre Dame has always been dealing with restrictions when it comes to recruiting, not just academics, but also the dorm situation, living in South Bend, Indiana. Like, all of that stuff still exists. And I think that the fact that Notre Dame continues to get better on the field and they have a national championship run to show for it is going to help. It's proof of concept, right, for Marcus Freeman. But also, Marcus Freeman just signed a very lucrative contract extension. He's one of the highest paid coaches in college football, and one of the biggest parts of that contract was a large increase to his to the money that he could pay his assistant staff. So again, Notre Dame is willing to spend money. They just have to be smart about where they use it, and obviously they didn't want to match Chad Bowden.
I will say too, like, now, I thought this might come up in the chat. People are talking about rumors with Joe Rudolph and stuff. I don't know what they are. I know that they exist because people have been asking me about it all day. So I know that there are rumors or whatever. Like, don't ask me or this show about them. Or like
rumors that is going to the NFL, or
like rumors that there's like a problem and like at Notre Dame or whatever. And I don't know what the rumors are or what people are saying. I'm not trying to shoot anything down or whatever. Like, we don't traffic in rumors because it just doesn't do anyone any good. Like, if there's factual stuff going on, then we'll talk about that. But like that sort of thing is just, and look, that will cost us views, that'll cost us engagement and all those other things. We're not doing that. Like, we're not doing the he said, she said, hearsay stuff. It doesn't do anyone any good. It really doesn't. The need to know stuff, it's just like, that ain't it. That's not it.
Yeah, I would be more bummed to lose Joe Rudolph than Chad Bowden, honestly. I think he's done a terrific job with the offensive line since he's come on board. I mean, what they did this past season with all those guys getting hurt and still just making it work was an incredible job. So I hope he stays, but if he doesn't, again, it goes back to my point. This happens all the time at all the biggest programs. Like, coaches, when you have a great staff, which Notre Dame clearly does, other people want a piece of it, and they can offer promotions that sometimes Notre Dame can't, and they leave. This is just how it always works. Nick Saban had 8 offensive coordinators during his time. Like, the great coaches, they just have to hire great staffs all the time. And Marcus Freeman has shown that he's really good at hiring his staff. So, whenever these coaches leave, like, I don't imagine Rudolph is going to be around forever. Then it's going to be on him to make another good hire. But so far, he's given us every reason to believe that he will make another good hire.
Yeah. Told it to your face. So what? Thank you for the super chat. It's been reported on Lucky Lefty that Notre Dame is not willing to pay high school defensive linemen the $300,000-$400,000 to get in the door. Why is Notre Dame's NIL $7 to $8 million while OSU's is almost triple Notre Dame's? I think we just talked about that.
Yeah.
We just talked about that. Also, like, here's another part of why Notre Dame didn't pay as much in NIL, because someone like Blake Fisher, who would have been an expensive player, decided to go to Notre Dame. Decided to go to the NFL. That's another reason. Like, they need, and I guarantee you money was not the problem there either. Like, he wanted to go to the NFL. If Ben Morrison wanted to come back to Notre Dame would pay the commanded NIL money. But he doesn't. He wants to go pro. JT Tuilemow, Travion Henderson, right? Jack Sawyer. Guys like this, Lathan Ransom, Quinshawn Judkins, Caleb Downs, Davison Egbenuson, like guys like that, they are commanding more money, and they are staying in school for this specific purpose. They need, if Blake Fisher had stayed, Notre Dame's NIL would be a lot more than $7 to $8 million, right? That's the nature of it. Like, you do need guys to want to stay. And look, they got the national title game.
I know.
They played a national championship game. It was 31-23 with 4 minutes left. Like, that's what it is. And look, Notre Dame has to figure out how to solve these problems. So they need to figure out how to get that talent into their building, right? And by the way, that's part of what Chad Bowden needed to do, right? That was his job, to get that talent in Notre Dame's building. And he got some. I'm not saying he didn't do a good job. He did a very good job at Notre Dame. But there are some areas where they could not. There's been a ton of talk in the chat about Notre Dame's lack of 5 stars, right? They've been able to get 5 stars at linebacker, been able to get 5 stars on the offensive line, right? You miss out on Deuce Knight. You miss out on Derek Meadows, right? You miss out on these guys, and here you are, right? You're not getting the D tackles, not getting the defensive ends that you want. You're falling short in these areas, and so you just take the good with the bad on that sort of thing. We're not talking about that in the chat anymore. We're stopping. Stop that. I wanted to ask you about what did I want to ask you about? I wanted to ask you about Notre Dame's kind of position right now. Like, there's a lot of way too early conversations. And you look at Notre Dame's situation at where they are on their roster and where they are in going forward in 2025. And, look, obviously there's a day and a half left of guys being able to enter the portal. So we got to monitor that stuff. But I feel like it's just quarterback, right? Like, is quarterback not just the one big question that Notre Dame has this year going into just like they got to get that sorted out, whether it's Angeli or Minchie or CJ Carr? Like, is that really the only question that Notre Dame has here?
Yeah, it's certainly the biggest thing holding me back as I start to look at it next year. And it's not just, they got to figure out who the quarterback is. Whatever quarterback they decide, that quarterback has to go to Miami week 1, play on the road. And then I think like 2 weeks after that, they got to play up against the Mike Elko defense. And then they got to manage to go to Arkansas. And I know that people might kind of roll their eyes at going to Arkansas. Hey, man, Tennessee lost on the road to Arkansas this year, and they are going to be pumped for Notre Dame to come to town. So I'm just worried about the schedule at the beginning of the year. Like, can they survive through September with whoever they decide to go with at quarterback? Like, I know everyone loves CJ Carr, and I hope that he ends up being a great quarterback, but man, you throw him into that kind of fire early on, like there are some big, big risks associated with that. So I hope Angeli comes back and, I don't know if he'll be the starter all season, but I would feel more comfortable with a guy like Angeli, who's been around, who, by the way, just orchestrated one of the most critical drives of the season in a playoff game against Penn State. So I think, quarterback is obviously a big deal. And I think something that's not being talked about a ton that I'm worried about are guys recovering from major injuries like Ashton Craig, Jordan Botelho, Boubacar Traore. Those are 3 guys who need to be impactful pieces for Notre Dame next year. And who knows when they're going to be ready. So you take all that stuff into account. I still think Notre Dame is in a great position on the O-line, running back, wide receiver. Defense should be awesome too with whoever they hire as DC. But yeah, they're in a great position. They've certainly got their questions, but so does everyone else in the entire country. Like Joel Klatt, I love him, work with him. He put Penn State 1. And I was like, are you crazy? And, he made his points. And, I think, when you break it down, it's like, I mean, I guess, but that's the thing is like, there's no clear cut. There is no Ohio State going into this year like there was last year where everyone looked at Ohio State and was like, man, they are the clear number 1.
Yeah, people think Drew Allar's good. Why? He's never played well in a big game ever in his life.
Nope.
Against a top team, right? Like, so he had big games against SMU and Boise State. Congratulations, rub your back, but I don't know. I just feel like he's never been in a good game.
That's a good point, though. Who's the best quarterback in college football next year?
Right. That's out there, right?
I don't. I mean, everyone's like Arch, like
Sam Levitt. Maybe? I saw a list today that says Sam Levitt was the top guy. So that's something.
Or Lenore Sellers. I mean,
yeah, probably. Listen, you got to position yourself well. You can position your social media company well. You can position your small business well. You can have a highlight reel, position that well to get out to people by going to VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. We got a couple more super chats here. Robert Hallecky says, did we not just play in a national freaking championship? The Detroit Lions are losing all of their staff for the first time ever because they are winning. Notre Dame is winning. Best season since 88. Enough said. Yeah. I mean, look, like you said, I think, Tyler, you said it right. Like, it is the time of year where things are being lost and nothing is being gained, right? Right. Notre Dame gained all of their portal guys so far. Couple weeks ago, right? And that was like a slow trickle. And it was also during the national title run. So it's like that kind of didn't get the shine. Like, I guarantee if this week Notre Dame was getting all of their portal guys, while, and then a week after that, they lost portal guys, like it would have been more balanced. But they didn't, so it went the way it went. But thank you for the super chat, Robert Hallecky. And it sounded like there was an MRI for your mom there. Glad to see that went well. So blessings to her. Told it to your face. So what? Thank you for the super chat. Great show as usual. Last point. When Fox Sports reported on Notre Dame's NIL in the past, it was as a fixed amount. So if the two O linemen that went pro came back last year, our NIL budget would not have increased. Or a football scoop, I think, when football scoop reported. I don't know that that's true. Yeah, I don't think that's true, because it can't be true. Like, because, and in fact, I know it isn't true. It just isn't.
If Blake Fisher came back, then it's more. And they offered him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They have to accept.
Yeah, they do have to accept it. So it isn't a fixed amount. The budget is what you paid for your. I think what they're talking about is the amount that you paid for your portal class, or an NIL, be that high school, be that from college, from the portal, transfer portal, and all that other stuff. I love Jason Beddix here. What's this with Chad Bowden going to USC? Yes, 57 minutes in. Jason, it's funny to me because we talked about it for literally 30 minutes to start this show. So just go back and listen to that. We got we got a ton of talk on that.
I got something good for you. So I was thinking about this. So I'm seeing the reaction. And everyone's like, this is the worst offseason ever. So I remember last year, I went back and looked. So December 1st, 2023.
Yeah.
Notre Dame season had just ended. What happened around that time? The whole wide receiver room entered the portal.
Yes,
I'm looking at the episode I did on YouTube. I just pulled up the top comments. Top one. This is unlike anything I've ever seen in a Notre Dame offseason. The confusion and misinformation surrounding the whole Stuckey firing and the wide receiver room exodus. It is unbelievable and unfortunate. This program is going nowhere. 1 year later, in the playoff, went to the national championship. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
It'll be fine. It's all good, and like, again, this happens every year around this time, and everything kind of works out, check down Angeli there. It is what it is. I think, again, Vamos Irish still misses Rico Flores. He had a good start at UCLA. I think he got hurt.
Yeah, he did. Jaden Thomas, he feels like he's going to UCLA just because it feels like all of the transfers from Notre Dame end up there. You got Rico, you got Ramon Henderson. It's either UCLA or Cal. So apparently all the Notre Dame departures, they come to California. They either go to Cal, they either go to UCLA, or now in Chad Bowden's case, he's going to USC.
Everyone's coming to California, Tyler.
Me included. It's true.
Yeah,
Matthew Patterson. In South Bend for 4 years. I get it.
Matthew Patterson says Twitter rumor appears to be Coogan to Indiana. I thought that was Spindler. I thought Spindler was. I saw Michigan kind of poking around there. I thought Coogan was Ole Miss.
That would be very funny. First of all, Lane Kiffin tweeted that. He's from Illinois, right?
He's from Illinois,
Chicago. Didn't Pat Coogan
I know
go to the same high school?
Oh, the Marist
I don't know why I find that
have.
funny. I'm pretty sure they did. I don't know why. I just find that funny.
Yeah, rumors about Carnell Tate. Heard that like a month ago.
That's because his girlfriend goes to Oregon.
Oh, does she? Gotcha.
And they're willing to pay him $2 million.
Yeah.
That little side bet. It reminds me of oh man, I'm bringing up bad memories. The whole Peyton Bowen girlfriend thing, and then do you remember when the Oklahoma football Twitter account like posted her picture or something weird? That if I was a college coach and I saw that, I'd be like, for that reason, I'm going to the NFL. Like I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. I guess one last comment about the Chad Bowden thing and like everything going on for me. Like, it would be worse if the worst thing that happened in Notre Dame football and all those other things, it would be worse to lose Mickens by a large amount to me. And I think that is more likely on the table than I think people want to believe, more than I want to believe. But I do think that's more on the table, and I think that would be the bigger loss. I think that one would. It's kind of one of those things like that is truly Marcus Freeman, you better be right type situation with your DC hire, because you could go with Mike Mickens and that, the whole continuity thing that could keep going on. And that is something that we will have to monitor throughout. And that is something that like Marcus Freeman will have to kind of wear for the foreseeable future. Because that is truly if this doesn't work out and you lost your best position coach, because you didn't want to promote him, that would be something that would have to be monitored throughout like the next couple seasons,
Yeah, I'm sure he's thought about that too. Like he
for
knows
sure.
Pickens, he knows how good he is, and I'm sure all of that is being considered as they look at Notre Dame's next defensive coordinator.
Yeah. So that's something we're going to have to monitor throughout the next couple of weeks and going forward here. So I think me and Tyler can end it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going to go live. We'll be back on Monday with Power Hour and Mike Frank. Then Tuesday, we'll be back with me and Jamie Hit and Hustle. I'm going to have John Bryce scheduled for the show on Wednesday. And then we'll have our Thursday Hit and Hustle as well. So that's what we got coming up. Again, have a good rest of your weekend, everybody. Have a, enjoy the NFL playoffs, enjoy the conference title games, those things. Follow the news. Don't freak out over the news is my advice. All right. Have a good one, everyone. Keep hitting and hustling.